folks, good afternoon. Welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time, and welcome to another chocolate review. Today we're not only talking about a brand that we have never talked about before on the channel because I didn't know they existed, but we're also talking about a brand that hails from the same place that I do. So we're very happy about it. Today we are talking about Otherly. Now, when I tell you that these appear to have come out of nowhere, I had never heard of this brand before until December, just last month. I was in a kind of local boutique-y food shop that is not too far away from where I live, saw this brand all over the shelf, never seen it before, and instead of buying it because I thought, okay, it's Christmas, let's, save up a little bit of the budget for next month, I received not one, not two, but 3 of their bars from 2 separate people at Christmas, from people who clearly know me better than I know myself. And so today we are going to be tasting our way through all 3 of these bars to check out this brand and let you know whether it's worth picking up for yourself. We're going to be talking about 3 different flavors, though they do have kind of plain chocolate too. They have a whole multitude of different flavors straight out of the gate. And we're going to be trying their Cold Brew Coffee chocolate, their birthday cake chocolate, and their salted caramel chocolate. But what makes this different? What is Otherly? They make entirely vegan chocolate, from what I understand. All of these, as the name might kind of suggest, are completely milk-free, dairy-free. There are no animal products in here, and instead the creaminess, we hope, is going to come from oat milk. So let's get our teeth into it and see how they are. I would very much like to start with the birthday cake milk chocolate, because it's one that kind of stands out to me as the most unusual, and it's one that will probably have a slightly softer flavour than the others. So let's get into it. I have to say absolutely only good things about the packaging of this brand, because it is an absolute 10 out of 10. It's like somewhere between graffiti, a comic strip, and like a Where's Wally book. There's so much going on all of the wrappers, but it's gorgeous. So from this one we can expect chocolate made with oat milk that will have sugar strands inside, hence the birthday cake vibes. It's a 43% cocoa bar, so leaning more towards milk chocolate than dark chocolate, but of course instead of the milk in there we have dried oat powder and a fairly decent looking amount of cocoa butter in there. So let's get in. Nothing particularly obvious from one side, and we turn over to see this gorgeously and, fairly on-brand branding. I think it's very, very pretty. Perhaps not the easiest for breaking up and sharing because it's just one solid mass of chocolate, but, these have arrived from a different country and are still in one piece, so we do have to compliment them for that. So it seems like we have those sugar strands, those hundreds and thousands, those sprinkles, very much sprinkled evenly throughout the whole bar. The smell, I have to be completely honest, is giving somewhat Easter egg chocolate, advent calendar chocolate, if I'm being completely honest. But let's hope that we have some good texture and some good flavor in there. Let's try it. Okay, the texture is definitely something that you would expect from mainstream milk chocolate. There's some creaminess there. Not the smoothest texture in the world, but there is some creaminess there. It's not a particularly sweet bar. In fact, even with all the kind of sugar strands in there, which I expected to really ramp up the sweetness, it's not particularly sweet. And similarly, though this might sound a bit odd, it doesn't actually taste very much of cocoa. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. I can tell it's chocolate, but the fact that cocoa mass is the 4th ingredient on the list kind of explains what this is, I think. The main ingredient is sugar, followed by cocoa butter and that oat powder giving the creaminess. The cocoa mass is the 4th ingredient, meaning there's perhaps not as high a quantity, and while it's 43%, it's not particularly present. The flavour of that oat powder is absolutely there, which for me is no problem. I was raised on porridge and things full of oats, so it's a flavour I don't dislike, but that almost tastes like a kind of oat granola with cocoa in it. It's like something chocolate flavoured, if that makes sense. The sprinkles certainly add something in terms of texture if you like a bit of crunch in your chocolate, and they do add a nice bit of kind of playfulness to the appearance of the product. I don't particularly think they add much in terms of taste, and I don't think it's what's missing from this bar to balance out that noticeably vegan flavour, shall we say. So with the hope that the other bars are going to be slightly better, slightly more balanced, maybe a bit more flavourful, this isn't one I would rush back to get So I would probably stick this one around a 3 out of 5. If you're dairy free, there are better options, but there are definitely worse options too. Let's move on. I think we will move on to the salted caramel chocolate to see how this one is doing. This one again has cocoa mass listed as the 4th ingredient. I'm guessing they use probably a similar base for all of their bars. This one also contains dehydrated rice powder, some salt, and caramel flavouring. I don't know if there's actually gonna be pieces of caramel in here, like crunchy pieces, or if it's just gonna be a flavour. Let's get into that. The smell, I have to say, is that kind of Twix smell, that sort of caramel flavouring smell, rather than smelling like burnt sugar. The bar is just plain and simple like the other, but lacking in the sprinkles. Very good snap. As we can see, there is no kind of obvious appearance of any like pieces of caramel or particularly, you know, a strong presence of any flaky sea salt in there. Let's see how it is on flavour though. I will give them huge props for the texture, for the consistency. For being a plant-based milk chocolate, great texture, smooth, creamy. You can chew it without it feeling oily, but also you can let it melt and it's just a nice, classic milk chocolate texture. Very, very enjoyable. The flavour. The salt content is spot on. You can feel those actual pieces of that sea salt in there, even though they weren't particularly visible, definitely in there. And it lends to a nice balance between the sweet and the savoury and just makes the whole thing very complex in the mouth. You can feel the actual salt properly on the back of your tongue. However, as the smell kind of hinted at, that caramel flavour is very artificial, which is a little bit disappointing. Now, it's not the same flavour as we had, for example, in the most recent Kit Kat salted caramel review. It's not exactly that flavour. It's not a Twix, it's not a Mars bar. There's a hint of that, but there's also a very potent butter flavour that's coming through as well. And I don't mean it tastes like a buttery caramel. It tastes like artificial butter flavouring, artificial caramel, and artificial vanilla all kind of mingled together and squirted into this bar. And it's very, very strong. Now, that might be something you're kind of into, that kind of almost toffee-like flavour that just feels like it's been really, really ramped up, that then kind of lingers in your mouth after you finished eating it. Now, the kind of butteriness does go well with the creamy consistency of the chocolate itself, but it tastes fake. Personally, I think they could have done this maybe a bit better, even with a little bit of that flavouring in there and maybe also adding some pieces of caramel in there. It tastes a lot of flavouring, which won't put everyone off, especially if you're a big fan of just the flavour of salted caramel. But I feel like that could have been executed better. It does some things very, very well, but isn't doing everything it could do. So I would again give that one a 3 out of 5. Shall we move on to the one that perhaps intrigues me the most in terms of flavour because it's right up my street? And that is the Cold Brew Coffee bar. Is this gonna be just a kind of buzzword, having the cold brew part on there? Is it gonna taste like coffee? Is it gonna taste like that lovely, non-bitter, almost sweet flavour that cold brew coffee has? Or is it just gonna be some coffee and some chocolate? So from this one, we can expect kind of the same proportions of everything. 1.5% coffee in here and some added vanilla flavouring too. Let's see. Okay. The smell is intriguing. This one, unlike the other two, unfortunately, has had a little bit of a nervous breakdown. Happens to the best of us. But the branding is pretty much the same on the bar, as you can see. There's not really much kind of chocolate coming through in the smell, but it also doesn't smell like coffee flavouring, thankfully. Let's see how it is. This one by far has what I would describe as the most kind of sophisticated, balanced flavour of them all so far. Texture is pretty much identical to the other two bars. You know, there's that nice kind of creaminess, it melts well, but also, you know, nice and thick enough to chew if that's how you like to enjoy your chocolate. This one seems to kind of compensate for what the first one was lacking in, where there was that kind of absence of bold flavour. This one makes up for. It's not too sweet. It's not bitter whatsoever, but the addition of that coffee just kind of lifts up to exactly where you want a fairly strong cocoa milk chocolate to be in terms of flavour. You know, 43% isn't a small amount of cocoa. a typical milk chocolate bar is you know, in a supermarket, on a shelf anywhere, you'll find between kind of 25 to 35% cocoa. So seeing one with 43%, I expected a stronger flavour in that first bar, and this is the first one that actually kind of has it. But that's thanks to the coffee, not the cocoa. The coffee flavour is very gentle. I can see why the cold brew thing does kind of apply. Whether the coffee used in this was cold brew coffee or not, doesn't really matter. It does offer that nice, balanced, gentle coffee flavour. Not bitter, not that kind of astringent flavour. There's no powderiness. It's just a nice, gentle, Starbucks mocha type flavour, you know, something that isn't particularly powerful or divisive and would please, I think, most people who enjoy milk chocolate and coffee. As a plant-based bar, again, props for the texture, absolutely. Flavour is nice, definitely the most pleasant of the three so far, though still not anything particularly mind-blowing. Still not anything particularly wow. So with all of that said, you know, if you're someone who can't have milk, if you are someone who doesn't consume any animal products whatsoever, you like coffee and chocolate together, this is something you'll definitely enjoy. It's vastly superior to other kind of dairy-free options. Still not the best, but I would give this one a solid 4 out of 5. It's enjoyable, it does what it says it's going to do, and it's definitely doing something different with a lot of care taken with the packaging, etc., etc. That's a decent product. Folks, I'm not gonna lie, I expected a bit more from today's brand based on nothing really. based on the care kind of taken in the packaging, based on wanting to be plant-based, etc., but not screaming kind of health food at the same time. I was perhaps expecting a bolder flavour from these bars. All three of them definitely can be praised for their texture, which is often one of the most difficult things to do when it comes to plant-based chocolate, or at least plant-based chocolate that has to be kind of milk chocolate. The flavour could be improved upon. Perhaps some of their other bars have better flavours. I think I've seen on their website they had a gingerbread bar out over Christmas. There's a cherry version, there's an orange version. Perhaps there are some flavours that just lend better to the chocolate itself. Or perhaps maybe they just need to kind of ramp up the cocoa content a little bit. There's room for improvement, but this definitely hasn't been unpleasant as an experience. But I would love to know your thoughts. If you've seen these bars, if you've tried them, if you're curious about them, let me know your thoughts in the comments. It's not the cheapest of products. It's certainly not something that will appeal to everyone. Not everyone needs to kind of enjoy plant-based things, but I'd love to know your thoughts. But folks, that is all I have time for today. Thank you so much as always for watching, and I will see you for the next one.